Let me ask you something directly. When was the last time you told yourself, I'll do it soon, and nothing changed? Not your future, not your options. Most likely, you're protecting yourself from the discomfort of being wrong. From the moment a decision becomes visible, it can be judged by others and by you. Doing nothing avoids that exposure, and that single instinct shapes more lives than bad decisions ever could. In the last video, we talked about why waiting for confidence is a trap, why the feeling people wait for rarely arrives on its own. Today, we go one layer deeper. This video is about why inaction feels safe, even when it's slowly costing you more than action ever would. Because the problem is not lack of courage, it's how safety is calculated. If you're new here, this channel is not about motivation. It's not about pushing yourself harder or forcing change. It's about understanding how decisions actually work when the stakes are real and emotions quietly override logic. Every video in this series builds on the previous one. So far, we've talked about the cost of not deciding, why staying feels safer, and why decisions don't automatically lead to action. Now we're looking at the instinct underneath all of that. Why doing nothing feels like the safest choice, even when it isn't. Doing nothing feels safe because nothing immediately breaks. No conversation happens. No mistake becomes visible. No one reacts. From the outside, it looks calm, controlled, stable. But calm is not the same as safe. Doing nothing is still a decision. It's just one that hides its consequences. The brain loves this setup because when nothing changes, there is no feedback, no embarrassment, no clear failure. There's nothing to correct, nothing to explain. So the mind labels inaction as low risk. That label is wrong. It's not low risk, it's delayed risk. Delayed risk feels manageable because it doesn't demand attention now, but it compounds. And unlike visible mistakes, it rarely triggers urgency until the cost is already high. If you're waiting for the right moment, it's not because you're weak or lazy. If this kind of thinking helps you, consider subscribing. If you want more videos like this, calm, structured, and focused on real decisions, subscribe to the channel. Here's the real reason people freeze. Not because they're lazy, not because they're incapable, but because being wrong feels worse than standing still. A wrong decision feels personal, visible, embarrassing. It creates a clear moment of responsibility. This was my choice. Inaction doesn't create that moment. People don't ask, what happens if I do nothing? They ask, what happens if I choose wrong? And because the pain of a wrong move feels immediate and concrete, they default to inaction. Not realizing that inaction has its own outcome, it just arrives quietly. This is exactly the moment Quit and Go is built for. Not to tell you what to do, but to force a clear answer to one question. Is staying still actually the safer option anymore? It removes emotional comfort and replaces it with structural clarity. Not urgency, not pressure. Clarity. Link is below. Not deciding feels neutral, but it isn't. It's a silent decision with delayed consequences. The brain is not optimized for growth. It's optimized for survival, and survival favors familiarity, predictability, known discomfort over unknown risk. So the brain rewards staying put, not because it's good, but because it's familiar. A known problem feels manageable even when it's slowly draining you. An unknown solution feels dangerous, even when it might objectively improve your situation. That's not weakness, it's biology. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats, and change registers is one of them. From the brain's perspective, doing nothing is not inaction. It's risk avoidance. No new variables, no unexpected reactions, no need to adapt quickly. That reduction in uncertainty creates a sense of relief. And the brain interprets that relief as safety. This is where people get misled. The brain doesn't ask, is this good for me long term? It asks, is this familiar right now? And familiarity almost always wins. Even when familiarity means ongoing dissatisfaction, quiet frustration, slow erosion of motivation, the brain prefers a predictable drain over an unpredictable shock. That's why people stay in situations they openly describe as not working, not because they enjoy them, but because their nervous system has learned the pattern. The discomfort is known, the emotional cost is mapped, the reactions of others are predictable. Change would require recalibration, and recalibration feels expensive. Your nervous system sends subtle signals. Better not. Not now. Let's wait. Those signals feel intelligent. They feel cautious. But they are not strategic decisions. They are automatic responses designed to minimize short-term uncertainty, not long-term damage. Understanding this changes everything. Because once you realize that your brain is biased toward the status quo, the feeling of safety loses its authority. You stop asking, why does this feel risky? And start asking, is this discomfort actually protecting me and need us, or just preserving what I already know? That question is where momentum begins. If you're navigating decisions like this channel is built for you. If this way of breaking things down helps you think clearer, subscribe. This channel exists to expose patterns that quietly keep people stuck. The longer you don't act, the safer inaction feels. Not because it is, but because you've adapted to it. Time doesn't stand still while you wait. It quietly reshapes your perception. Your identity adjusts. Your standards shift. Your tolerance increases. What once felt temporary starts to feel normal. This is how the illusion forms. At first, waiting feels like a pause, a reasonable delay, a short moment to think. But over time, that pause becomes a pattern, and patterns feel stable. Not because they're good, but because they repeat. Time also blurs contrast. The dissatisfaction you felt early on loses its sharpness. You remember why you were unhappy, but you no longer feel it as clearly. That emotional dulling is dangerous, because it makes urgency disappear without solving the problem. At some point, change doesn't feel risky anymore, it feels disruptive. Not because the action became larger, but because your life reorganized itself around waiting. Routines formed, explanations hardened, others adjusted their expectations of you. And now, movement threatens that entire structure. This is where people confuse comfort with safety. Comfort is what happens when nothing challenges the current setup. Safety is what protects you from long-term damage. Time is very good at producing comfort. It is terrible at producing safety. Waiting also adds weight to action. Every month you delay, the story you'll have to tell gets longer. You don't just explain the decision anymore, you explain the delay. And that added explanation makes action feel heavier than it ever was at the start. That's why people say, I waited too long. Not because the decision changed, but because time turned a manageable step into a dramatic break. Time doesn't remove risk, it redistributes it. Less now, more later. And by the time most people realize that, inaction has already chosen for them. You see this clearly with conversations people avoid. Salary, boundaries, expectations. People don't stay silent because it's smart. They stay silent because speaking up feels riskier right now. Ask for more exists for exactly that moment, to decide whether silence is still protecting you or quietly costing you more. Here's the point where everything shifts. There is always a moment where doing nothing becomes the riskiest option. It doesn't arrive loudly, it doesn't announce itself. There's no clear signal, no warning sign. But it's there. Most people miss this moment because they keep comparing action to an imaginary version of perfect safety. They ask, what's the safest option? But that question is already flawed, because safety is no longer on the table. At this point, the real comparison is different. It's no longer action versus comfort. It's action versus slow damage. And slow damage is easy to underestimate because it doesn't demand immediate attention. This is where decisions stop being about improvement and start being about containment. You're no longer choosing the best outcome. You're choosing the least harmful path forward, and that's uncomfortable because it means accepting that every option has a cost, including doing nothing. Many people delay right here because they're still waiting for reassurance, for a sign, for confidence, for permission. But this moment doesn't offer reassurance. It offers responsibility. Once you recognize that non-action is no longer neutral, the internal debate changes. The question stops being, "Am I ready?" and becomes, "What happens if I keep waiting?" That question is harder to ignore. This is the point where action doesn't feel good. It feels necessary, and that's often the only moment where real movement begins. Subscribe if you don't want to keep delaying decisions that matter. The next videos move from insight to commitment. Both frameworks linked below, Quit and Go and Ask for More, are designed for moments like this. Not to push you, not to motivate you, but to help you see when doing nothing stopped being safe. In the next video, we'll talk about the moment most people fail to cross. The moment a decision becomes real.